Good morning all. Guys, in the previous session we discussed about a recursive relationship type. There we have discussed how an entity type can participate more than once in a single relationship in a relationship type that we have seen, right? So especially when we are representing a recursive relationship type, it is always mandatory to write the role name. This is what things we learned in the previous session. And once after completing this recursive relationship type, we entered into that scenario solving, right? So there we have solved one interesting scenario where it contains almost all notations of ER diagram, right? ER model. So there we have seen we have solved a scenario where it is related to an organization. There they want to record an employee database, right? Employee details, then department details, that means a branch details, then managers, supervisors, right? So then after they want to record the project details, and we have seen that how to make use of a cardinality ratio, especially in mapping the statements, English like statements of the scenario into the that ER model, right, into a pictorial representation that we have seen, right. So then after that we discussed how to make use of this participation constraint, right, the role of a participation constraint, especially in an ER diagram, that also we have seen, right. So whether all entities or participate, if it is participated like that, then we are showing it in terms of a total participation, right. Suppose if it is partially participated, then we are showing it with a single solid line, right, that we call by name a partial participation, right. So like that we have shown. And one more interesting thing at the end we have seen is that weak entity type, right. So how to, even that previous scenario that consists of a weak entity type example also, right. So there we have identified identifying relationship type when a weak entity type connected with a strong or a owner entity type. There most of the time we have come across with this identifying relationship type and the total participation from the weak entity type end, right. Then after that we discussed one more interesting thing in the previous scenario is writing of attributes even for the relationship type, right, that also permitted. The DR model permits us to write even such kind of a thing, especially in case of a many to many could be, I think, right. So I can remember we have shown that that is what a number of hours per week worked by each employee, right. So that we have attached to a works on relationship type, I think, right. So where we are having a many to many coordinate with employee to a project, where employee works on project, how many hours on each project and which project, which employee, right, that we are showing it with it in terms of that by attaching an attribute to a recursive relationship type, right, relationship type, right. So that's it. So guys, in the today's session I am with one more interesting scenario in front of you that we called by name that it is related to a tournament database, right. So let's assume, guys, there are we have seen that the tournaments like last few days back we have seen that IPL, right. So there are many players, there could be many teams, right. A player belongs to some teams, right, and each team having a coach, right, those things, and each team will play plenty of matches, right. At the end of the match one of the person will be awarded with the man of the match award, right. So then after that we have seen that any one team will win, right. So most of the time we have seen, right, and always a match will be played between the two teams, especially in cricket, right. So this is what the few things, and every game, every match is going to be played in one of the stadium, and every stadium having its own identity, right. So all details we want to store in suppose when we want to when we consider any tournament, cricket tournament kind of a scenario, right. So here I am having such a similar kind of a scenario to solve. We'll try to convert this whole scenario into an ER model, right, into a pictorial representation. Then later we'll go with mapping this ER diagram into a relational model, right, relational conceptual schema, right, relational schema. So we'll take up that each line one by one, and we'll go with converting it into an ER diagram, guys, with the help of this ER notations. So we'll read out, and once after reading each statement, in the side by side we'll try to construct an ER model here, right. So consider a cricket tournament, ABC Cup, organized by an organization. In the tournament, there are many teams are contesting, each having a team ID, team name, city and a coach. Look at this one, guys. So, what they are trying to convey here is they want to organize one ABC Cup kind of a tournament, cricket tournament, and they want to, they have given that information related to a team. Look at this one. So, there are many teams contesting, each having a team ID, team name, city and a coach. They are talking about that information they want to record is regarding a team, right. So, for that each team, there are many teams and each team is identified by team ID, having a name and a city, belongs to a city and having a coach. So, this information gives us a hint that it is to record details about a team, and so for that it is better to go with constructing an entity type related to this team, right. Let me go with identifying or building a team kind of an entity type, guys. Yes, I have done. Fine. And even they have given in the same statement the attributes which are all connected to this team. Let me go with identifying those things: team ID, team name and city and a coach. Let me add even that also to it. Team ID, team name, then city, then after that a coach. Fine. And one more interesting thing we can observe at this point of time here is each team having a team ID, and each team, next line, look at the next line, each team is uniquely identified by using team ID. Each team is identifying based on what? Team ID. It's an indication that we have to make this team ID as a what? As a key attribute of team entity type. Let me go with representing it as a key attribute. What is the notation we used? We are using underlining of that attribute, right. So, that represents, it's a notation we are using usually, right, especially it's a standard notation used especially in mentioning any key attribute, right, in an entity type. Let me go with underlining the team ID here, so that it becomes what? A key attribute of team entity type. Let me move on to the next few statements. Look at the next statement, guys. A team can have many players and a captain, right. What they are saying? A team can have many players. This is also true enough. A team can have many players, right. Then and a captain, right. A team even having a captain, but captain is also what, guys? A player. Fine. Next, each player is uniquely identified by player ID, having a name and multiple phone numbers, age. It's an indication that the statement gives us a hint that they want to record a player details, and along with that they are giving us a hint about how the relationship between the player and team we are having, right. So, that information is giving at these two statements, right. So, what it indicates, guys? It's an indication that go with constructing and one more entity type in the name of player, right. So, let me go with having one more entity type in the name of player. So, notation used for entity type is what? A rectangular box, right. So, then go with always the names as what we write, that to be what? Capitalized. That means write it in a uppercase letters. That's it. Fine. Then even they are describing how should be a player, right. What are the attributes, the properties of player, right. So, that also they are giving here, right. Given here. What is that? Each player is uniquely identified by player ID, having a name and multiple phone numbers, age. Look at this one. These are all the attributes: ID, player ID, name, player name, and multiple phone number and age. These are all what? The attributes of player. Let me go with recording all such things. What is that? Player ID. What next? Player name. Let me call it by name P name. Next what? Multiple phone numbers. What it indicates? It's the multiple phone numbers gives us a hint that each player might have more than one phone number, right? So this is what they are conveying. So especially when we are discussing about the types of attributes, there we have seen if any entity having a multiple value under some column, that means for some attribute, then such attributes we call it by name what? Multi-valued attribute, right? An attribute which takes more than one value for an instance, that means for an entity, right? So that we call it by name multi-valued attribute, and always represented with two concentric what oval shaped symbols, right? Elliptic symbols, right? So here we have to represent this phone number. Okay, it is an attribute, but what kind of an attribute? Phone number, we will write multiple, right? So player might write multiple phone numbers could be recorded, right, for each player. So for that, so we have to represent it as multi-valued. So this is what annotation we are using to represent a multi-valued attribute, right? Phone number. Fine. What next, guys? Age. So age will record. So few of my friends might think that sir, age and date of birth are stored and derived attribute. Yes, it's okay, but they have not given date of birth here, and also they have not asked us to derive it, right? So for that, no need to represent it as a derived attribute, because we are not recording a date of birth here, they have not given. Then after that, guys, when I go with a team can have many players, so it's an indication that a team can have, we are having a team kind of an entity type and a player kind of an entity type. So for that, a team can have many players. This statement is conveying us it is better to go with building one relationship between the team and the player, right? So let me go with constructing one relationship type between this player and the team. What is that, guys? A team can have many players. A team, that means one team, can have what? Many. Many players means what? N, I can write 1 to many. Team can have, right? Team having players. Let me call it by name having. Team having players. Our team contains players. Whatever you want, you can write your name. So with the right verb. So team, one team can have many players. Fine. All teams, suppose if our assumption is all team having a players, then go with writing a total participation. Let's assume, for example, a team was constructed, still players was not selected. During that time, it becomes what? A partial participation. And if there is a player, it's an indication that definitely he belongs to any one of the team, right? So during that time, I can draw what? Two solid lines as an indication that all players of this player entity type, that means all instances are connected to any one of the teams. So for that I have shown it as what? A total participation with the help of two solid lines, right? Parallel solid lines. Fine. And one more, a team can have a captain, right? So that also we want to record. So what I can do is, there are many ways to represent. Here team can have a captain, right? Team and captain. Where exactly that captain is present, guys? Captain is present in the player part, right? Because a captain is also a player. Look at this one. So few of my friends might think that, sir, captain is part of a player and captain manages a team, manages other players. So for that we have to write one recursive relationship type here with the player manages a player, where one side the role played by the player instance is a captain, and other side it is a non-captains, right? So that we can write, but they have not given here, right? So then what else we have to record here is they are talking about how team is connected with a captain, right? And captain is present in the pool of these players, right? In the player entity instance entities, right? So for that, it's an indication that try to build a relationship between what? Team and a player. Team having, what they're saying, guys? A team having a captain. Team can have a captain, they're saying, right? So team having, it's a player, right? captain player we can write, right? Team having a captain player I can record, right? So what is that? Each team, a team can have a captain player, only one captain, so for that it becomes what? 1-to-1, fine. Whether to write total participation from the player, and no. Why, guys? All players are not captains. One of the player could be, right, might be captain. That means here we are having all team players, so for that there could be many captains, but all players are not captains. So for that it is what? A partial participation. But look at this one, guys. If there is a team, then definitely there is a captain. But if I consider like this, then every team will have at least one player. That also becomes true, right? During the time I can write even the total participation from this end, right? Because every team having a captain means there is a total participation, and it's an indication that if every team having a captain means every team having at least one player, so that each team instance at least connected to one instance, minimum of at least one instance of this player entity type, right? So for that I can write a total at this end, because since we are saying every team having a captain, it's an indication that every team having at least one player, right? Fine. But all players are not captains, so for that we have represented it with what? A partial participation, fine. So that's all, guys. Almost we have completed this part. So let me move on to the further part of this scenario. Yes. So next statement of the same scenario is, there are many stadiums to conduct matches. Each stadium is identified using stadium ID, having a stadium name, address, where address involves city, area name, pin code. A team can play many matches, right? So it's an indication that here they're describing how a match between the teams is going to be played, right? So that they are showing here, describing here, right? So, and they're talking about the stadiums, right? Usually the matches will be played in the stadiums only, right? So then they're talking about the stadium, what are the things they want to record with respect to a stadium, right? So that they have given here. So what are the things, guys, they have given? There are many stadiums. This itself showing there are many stadiums means I want to record details about a stadium. And what kind of the details they want to record? Stadium name, address, where it includes city, area name, pin code, many other things. Next, a stadium each identified based on stadium ID. So they want to record stadium ID, stadium name, address, those things. It's an indication that there are many stadiums, and with respect to each stadium they want to record these three things. That means stadium ID, name, address. It's an indication that need to create what, guys? An entity type related to what? Stadium. Let me go with constructing an entity type related to what? Stadium. Let me go with identifying the attributes which are connected to the stadium. What all, guys? Stadium ID, name, where, and address. Let me record stadium ID. Let me call by name SID. Then stadium name S name. Next, what they have given? Address. But they have given one more interesting thing, where address involves city, area name, pin code. What it shows, guys? Only for address they have given like this, not for the name or for the stadium ID. Why? It's an indication that the address is composed of many simple components, right? Many simple attributes. It's an indication that it is what? One attribute where it is composed of many simple attributes. During the time we call it by name, this as what, guys? Composite attribute, right? Fine, we have seen. Let me go with representing it with a composite fashion with the help of this year model notations as what we have learned. Let me go with recording address, where address involves what, guys? City, area name, pin code. That I'll connect it with this. What is that? City, then what? Area, then what? Pin code. Yes, things were recorded. Fine. What's the next step? This much is over. What's the next step? Next is very crucial part because they're talking about the relationship type. Let me see, guys. A team can play many matches. What's that? A team can play many matches. Where is the match? Oh, we have not recorded. So it is an indication that, so the amount of information as what it is giving, the statement, that itself is not enough. It requires what? Go further. Let me move on to our next statement now. Each match played between the two teams. Yes, true, it is always true, especially in case of cricket. Always a match contains only two teams, right? Fine. It's not like a chaukabara, where 4 players at a single instance of time they can play, right? So here 4 teams can participate there, right? But here what? Only 2 teams in each match. Fine. Each match played between 2 teams. Fine. In the scheduled date and time in the predefined stadium. Fine. Look at this one, guys. Each match played between 2 teams. It's an indication that match, there could be many matches because a team can play many matches, and each match having a predefined date and time, that means when to conduct, the scheduled date and time we are having. Then after this what? And where to play, the stadium name, stadium details, stadium ID, that also they want to record with respect to a match. What it indicates, guys? It's an indication that better to go with creating, because they want to record the details about a match, So whether this match played between which 2 teams and what date and what time and which stadium, in which stadium, right? So that they want to record. So for that, they want to create what, guys? One more entity type in the name of what? Match. Let me go with creating one more entity type in the name of match. Fine. Next. Each match is identified uniquely by using match ID. Look at this one. This statement will give a further confirmation that each match is identified uniquely using a match ID. So for that, it's definitely an entity type, and that to what? A strong entity type, because it's having a key attribute in the name of match ID to identify each match uniquely, right? So let me go with identifying the attributes of this match now. What is that? Match ID. Next what? Now the match name, what is that? Each team, in which stadium, at what time that match is going to be played, right? So let me call by name date and times, scheduled date, yes date and yes time I can record. Or we are having a date time kind of an attribute in case of an SQL where I can record, I can join, I can merge both date and time together, right? So if not, you can have it in a separate attribute, that also possible, because we are having a date kind of a separate attribute where we have seen it in SQL that can be recorded with 4-digit year format, then followed by a month and followed by a DD date, right? So then after this, this time part, we are having a time kind of a data type, right? So through that we can represent it in terms of hour, then minute, then second, like that possible. Fine. So then let me take you to the two statements up. Look at this one. Each match played between what? 2 teams. It is again very much clear. If required, you can record it as team 1 and team 2. So for that, since it is a standard, or if not, if understanding is clear, then you can go directly connect, because this becomes a foreign key here, match ID. So let me go with recording this as team play what? Matches. I can go with identifying an entity type with match and a team. Team can play what? Each match played between the 2 teams. If required, you can record team 1 and team 2. But in few cases, since this team is an entity type, and once if it is connected with a match where team 1 ID and a team 2 ID, team 1 ID and team 2 ID, actually these 2 are the team IDs which are present in the team table. So for that, automatically these 2 becomes the attributes, right? attributes of this match that we can construct. Suppose when we go with converting that year to relational mapping, that we can do. But since here it is very much clear that two teams only, so for that to avoid the further confusions, what we can do is directly I can write team 1 ID and team 2 ID, because only two teams is going to be contesting in each match. So for that I'll record it here, so for that it becomes very easy for our further consideration and as well as further mapping purpose, right? If not, you can neglect it, but later you can make use of this team 1 and team 2 IDs for a match table, that means during a relational mapping, that also we can do it. So during that time again you have to go through the whole statement, right? That also becomes one more thing, right? Next, what else we want to record is, still we have not mentioned that cardinality. Let me go with finding a cardinality now. Each match played between the two teams, 2 means more than one, it becomes what, n. Each team play, each match played between, one match played between what, two teams, means 2 means what, many. Each match played between two teams, that means 1 to many, and a team can play, look at this one, a team can play what, many matches, that also be there, could be what it was given, each match won by any one of the team, that also they want to record in the database. So that means at each match ends up with what, any one team is going to win, right? So they have not considered that the tie, right? So let me go with writing either a winning team ID here, because that winning team is also what, either this team 1 ID or a team 2 ID, or the IDs, even team 1 and team 2 IDs, those are also present where, guys, in the team part. So for that these 3 becomes what, the foreign keys, and all 3 points to where, the team entity type, right, team table. So if required you can record win team ID, if required, because this becomes what, the design becomes, the mapping becomes easy, right, when you write like this, win team ID. If not, by revisiting the same statement by just constructing one relationship type, that also we can do it, possible. And one more, guys, each match can have many teams and a team can play many matches, this also true. So 1 to many and 1 to many from this end, this becomes what, 1 contains n and this 1 contains n, so I can replace it by what, many to many. One team can play many match and a match can be played between many teams, that means 2 teams, right? 2 means what, more than 1, many. Next, winning team ID, that also they want to record each match won by any one of the team, and that also they want to record in a database. Let me go with, we have recorded here, right? So for our mapping, to make our job of mapping to be easier, right? So that only, for that only we have recorded, but never forget, guys. So once if things are standard, that means only 2 will record here, only between 2 teams, that's why we have recorded. If not, we can skip these 3, but it requires the further reading, revisiting of a scenario, and we can go with mapping, right? So to avoid this have recorded here to make our mapping easier, that's it. But most of the time, look at this one, either a player ID or a team ID, that means the key attribute of this we have not recorded here, or the key attribute of this entity type we have not recorded here. It's an indication that it is a assumption that, so I can, especially when we go with mapping, year to relational mapping, there automatically I can take up the key attributes of other entity type, other table in the current table. It is possible, allowed. So let me move on to next line. What is that? For each match, man of the match award given to a player. For each match, man of the match is given, award is going to be given to a player. But player is present here, match is present here. It's an indication that it is required to construct a relationship between the match and a player. Match and a player. Yes. Player, play, match. Right? Or match having players. Player, play, matches. But indirectly player belongs to a team play matches means player is participating in a match possible, but here they want to record information related to what? For each match, man of the match award is going to be given to a player. That means match having man of the match player, that we want to record, right? Because already we have shown player belongs to team play matches. It's an indication that player is playing a match. But here we want to record what? Each match having what? Only one man of the match player. So for that we want to record match having man of the match. Team match having man of the match player, right? One match having only one man of the match player, that we want to record. So when we go with mapping, automatically this player ID, man of the match player ID, this becomes a foreign key. When you go with mapping, that we will see it. But whether all players will get a man of the match, who knows, we cannot say. So for that few entities, that means if we are having a 10 matches, then there could be hundreds of players. So only 10 man of the match award will be given, right? So what's the case we can consider here is, the worst case is all different 10 players might get this one, or one can get 10 man of the match awards. Even that time also, still we left out with 90 players, they will not get even a single man of the match award. So for that it becomes what, guys? Partial participation. But every match having a man of the match award, so for that it becomes what? A total participation from match into a player, right? With this relationship type having man of the match, right? So anything we left out, let me visit how. That's it. We have completed all statements. So for that we end up with one interesting diagram, right? We have mapped that whole scenario into an ER model here, guys, right? So that's it. Look at this one. We have identified what? Team, player, match, stadium kind of an entity type, and one more few things we missed. What is that? Stadium ID is a key attribute, right? One more. Then match ID is a key attribute. Fine. Anything else? A player here, player ID is a key attribute. That's it. That's it. Team 1 ID, team 2 ID, win team ID. No, these three are foreign keys, right? To avoid that revisiting, we have written here, right? To make our job of converting this into a relational model easier, we recorded these three. That's it, right? So that's all, guys. Fine, right? Thank you. Thanks for your patience listening.